Post-lockdown has not been great for Europe. We've seen Glutonny go over to the US a couple of times now, and every single time he does not perform as well as Europeans said he would. Now, people are wondering, what's the deal with Europe? Are they a lot worse than we even thought they were? And I think there's evidence that they are a little bit worse, and there's evidence that they're not, and that's making people confused, right? We had SWT, where there was a reasonably lackluster performance by the Europeans. Of course, Sisqui did it very well, but overall, like Glutonny, Pelly, not really doing what they wanted to do. On the other hand, we recently had Quik at Let's Make Big Moves perform extremely well. So all of this back and forth about Europe, you know, sometimes performing well, sometimes performing poorly, has people confused, and it makes sense because Europe as a region is super scattered, right? So you cannot really say, hey, how good is Europe as a whole, because of how much variance there is within the individual countries. However, as a European myself, I can attest that there are definitely some patterns in the region that I think should be discussed. So today we're going to be looking at what makes Europe a good region and what makes Europe a less good region, and next week we're going to do a follow-up where we'll be talking about some of the ways that Europe can tackle these issues. For now, guys, enjoy the video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff, and enjoy. Okay, chat. What do you need to be a good player? Let's say a player needs, like, you know, of course, we talk about being good, right? But being good is not just a singular thing, right? If you're good, you're gonna need multiple skills that make you good, right? Like, I could have a lot of experience and still not be good, right? There's a lot of people who just spend hours playing Elite Smash, thousands of hours, and they're still not good. So what do we need? Let's make a notepad. So what are some things that come up? Matchup experience, mindset, with a Venka, conditioning, adaptation, mindset again, mix-ups, a Ramses coaching session. Kind of true. If you can elaborate a little bit, then you might actually have one of the points I was looking for. Consistency is an outcome, but I'm gonna write it down because I think it's good that you mention it. Competition, right? Competition, I can see it. Discipline, very nice. I like it. I was looking for that one. Anything else? Consistent game plan. Yeah. So I'm gonna write down game plan, right? All right, chat. What else? Not living in EU. I think that's part of competition. Open to learning. I'd say that's part of like mindset. Anything else? Anything else you guys think you need to become a good player? Environment. Yeah, I'll replace competition with environment. Tournament experience. So let's change discipline to composure. Okay. A good matchup chart, right? Good matchups. Awareness. Yeah, I'd say awareness is kind of part of game plan. Let's kind of categorize these a little bit. So I think this is a decent list. There might be some things to add, but let's just roll with this. So out of these, guys, chat, out of these, which do you think Europe is lacking in? Experience, environment, based on Twitter, all of them. Matchups, every single one of them. Composure, true. What do you mean by that, Hearts? Tell me. How do European learn stuff like matchups? It's true. When me and Bloom spoke, he said conditioning and mix-ups. Right, yeah. Let's add another one, right? Understanding. Ooh, that's a big one. Yeah, I mean, you're never gonna get top level practice in Europe, but you're gonna get good enough practice, right? Like, if you learn Shulk from me, you're gonna be good against most Shulks. I can promise you that. If you learn Bowser Jr. from Eevee, you're gonna be good. If you're gonna learn Peach from Mary, you're gonna be good. If you're gonna learn Ness or Sora or Wolf from S1, you're gonna be good. And that's just my country, right? If you learn from a lot of players that I play with, I feel like you will be good. Okay, so here's what I think, right? I think Europe has a really bad understanding of the game. That's what it comes down to me, for me, right? And that's like, honestly, I'll be real. I think I'm super biased in that regard because like I kind of function from a place of understanding the game and kind of working from there, and like not everyone does that. But if you look at a lot of European players, you can see like the rate of growth is not as high as it could be because there is relatively limited understanding. Now this is not a bad thing, right? Like most people have pretty bad understanding of the game. If you look at like a lot of high level players in the US, it's kind of the same. So this is what I think, right? In the US, you have like a trickle down culture in terms of knowledge, okay? So imagine you live in New England in like start of Smash 4. right? I am elaborating. I'm elaborating right now. So imagine you live in New England at the start of Smash 4, and you're on a come up, and you kind of like, you do very well, you hit like a high point, you go like toe to toe with Mars, whatever, and like, you know, you kind of peak. You peak there. Now what happens is the following. You're not at a level yet where you can compete with the top, but the rest of the people in your state aren't either. So what happens is, Mars, he goes to a major event, right? And like, you know, you're on par with Mars, you're at like the same level. He goes to a major event, and he gets his ass kicked by the best in the world, right? Like 0, whatever it was at that point. Now, what happens is he plays against 0, and he starts to understand, hey, 0 is punishing me so much because I'm doing X. So you take that knowledge and you bring it with you to your own state, right? And in your own state, you tell, like, Mars comes back and he tells you, hey dude, like, I played 0 and he did this, and like he you know, he fucked me up for it. And now you understand this new way of thinking about the game without, like, through Mars learning that, right? So Mars learns it and takes it back, and it kind of like trickles down into your state. And like, you learn this new thing and you start using it against others, and like everyone starts using it. I don't think this ever happens in Europe. Like, ever. Like, the biggest example I can think of this is Mr. R, who in Smash 4 basically came to Europe and like ledge trapped everyone. And like, in the Netherlands, everyone had amazing ledge trapping after that. It wasn't as big of a thing in like every region. The UK had it as well to like a pretty significant degree. But like, Mr. R really like kind of like took that knowledge with him and like implemented it in our brain, right? So I think like that aspect of understanding is very lackluster in Europe. Too many people don't transfer knowledge. Exactly. And the thing is, like, in Europe there is kind of like a culture of I'll do it alone. I can do it alone. I don't need help. Right? Like, you know how many percent? Question chat. The person who gets it right gets a sticker. How much percent of my customer base is non-European? All right? How much percent of my customer base is not European, even though I'm a European myself? It's basically split right down the middle. It's like 50% American, 50% European. Something like that. I would say like 75% of my audience, it differs from month to month, right? But about 75% of my audience is European. That means that about twice as many Americans who interact with me on social media decide to get a coaching session as compared to Europeans. So I reach way more Europeans, but they get way less coaching sessions, which is insane. Like, that's the culture we're living within Europe, right? Like, and I cannot speak for like other countries per se, because like I'm Dutch, right? Dutch bias. But even in the Netherlands, not a lot of people get coaching with me. And what I can really, like, what I noticed, not just in like the coaching stats, so this is like statistics, right? That's like one half of the picture. It can be easily twisted and turned to represent whatever you want to represent, right? But based on my own experience, like, people are not really open to getting help. Why do you think that is? I think it's a cultural thing. In America, okay, this is a very rudimentary interpretation of what I experienced in the US. I've been there 3 times now. It's not a very thorough interpretation, but it is mine. So what I've noticed in the US is, in the US, people are all about services and they're all about luxury products, right? In Europe, that is way less of a thing. So for example, in the US, if you go to a grocery store, someone bags your groceries for you. That does not happen over here, at least not in the Netherlands. You bag your own groceries, and then you pay and then you leave. So like, service and luxury is very standard in the US. The people who know you in the first place gotta be more into the competitive scene. That's hard to say. I think you could argue about that a lot. So why do I think people in Europe don't really care about getting help? It's because it's not in culture. That's what I think. Europe is where all the luxury services, though. It's services, right? Luxury services. This is essentially what I'm doing, is a luxury service. And yeah, that's true as well, Gozo, is that in the Netherlands, what's up, Clean? In the Netherlands or in Europe, like, esports is not really seen as an investment. I remember, so when I started coaching, my mom, my mom was an angel. When I started coaching, she shared, like, my coaching business on her Facebook. And of course, like, she's friends with all, like, middle-aged ladies, and, like, they don't really care about esports coaching, so it's cute, though. And, her neighbor replied, and he's like, "What? Like, my son plays video games, but he doesn't need any help. Why would he need any help playing games? He can figure it out himself." That's kind of the attitude, right? Which is super weird, because, like, you put your child, like, you enter them into a club, and they get help all the time. Like, you enter your kid into a football club, they get a coach, a football mentor, a coach who helps them play the game. It's a game. Even if we call it sports, it's a game, right? Video games, physical games, same shit. So, let's see. I had this thought that in a scene locally to me, a lot of players are very against the ideas of me suggesting ways they can fix their gameplay, because I do worse. They believe that means I can't offer good advice, right? It's not a boomer thing, though, because that mindset gets transferred as well. It gets less with every generation, but, like, it decreases, right? It doesn't go away entirely. Now, the point is, because people are less eager to, well, for one, get help, which, to be fair, I mean, coaching hasn't been around for too long, right? But they're not eager to get help in general. They get less, a less developed understanding. And that kind of goes two ways, right? So on one hand, I can see people, like, they don't really try to, they don't really look for help, okay? And then on the other hand, people don't really like giving help either. So it kind of goes two ways. But I've helped people in Europe I've helped good players in Europe. I've given them very concrete advice, and they don't listen. They just don't listen. So the way you transition into high level is the way we transition into high level is decides whether you can grow through to top level or you kind of get stuck there. And I sincerely believe that. And I think the reason for that is that most people who break from mid into high level, they do so through abusing something that does not hold up, okay? So, for example, I'll give you an example, really good example, Zane, the Marth god in Melee, top 2 in the world, Zane. That Zane, he got to high level through Punish game. His neutral was legitimately, like, very subpar compared to the top of the world. But because no one has experience against a Marth Punish game at that level, he made his way into, like, the high top level, and then he was forced to learn neutral, right? But most players, what happens is, like, for example, right, Europe doesn't have, like, huge scenes, so, like, your country gets a raw player and they play a shit ton of Wi-Fi, right? And then they reach high level playing their Wi-Fi raw playstyle, and then they stagnate, and they'll always be able to beat the people under them, but they'll never be able to beat the people above them, because they rely on a gimmick, which is basically, like, quote-unquote Rob mashing, and then they cannot innovate on that gimmick. So what they would have to do is they would have to go back and basically say, okay, so I'm doing all these things, and I'm going to have to change the way I think about the game, and I'm going to have to rework all the things I'm doing right now, and then grow from there. So you basically have, like, a learning, like a skill curve where you kind of go, like, up in results, and then you dip down tremendously as you try to relearn everything, and then you skyrocket past where you used to be. So that's kind of like, that's kind of what most high-level players need to do if they want to get to the top, right? So they get there, they realize they have to change, and then they have to unlearn, and they have to get back up. So most people never get to the point where they're like, I have to unlearn this. And that's the state of a lot of Smash in Europe. Now here's the thing. Say you're in France, right? So it is the sine wave. So say you're in France. In France, players are generally, like, less consistent. We can say this about, like, most regions, right? I'm just using France as an example because they're the strongest region, and I think it's telling that even in the strongest region this happens, right? So say you're in France, and even, like, your good players are relatively inconsistent. So what you realize is that if you play inconsistent and they play inconsistent, then you can start winning. So let me draw this out. So this is the trap that happens in Europe. So this is, let's say, top player, right? So we have top player, and their play looks like this. Now we have, like, high level player, right? And their play also looks like this. Now, on a bad day, right? On a bad day, the top level player will look like this. And this is what happens. Is you have these high level players who go to like, let's say 20 tournaments. Let's say this is 20 tournaments, and they lose like, let's say, you know, 3, 4. They lose a shit ton of tournaments, but they win 1, 2, 3 times. So out of 20 tournaments, they win 3 times. And they're like, shit, I'm really getting better. I need to keep this up. Whereas in reality, it's just like, he's inconsistent, you're inconsistent, you're naturally going to find a point where you upset someone. But this is not a consistent way to win the game. Just straight up, just not a consistent way to win the game. But because people are result focused, instead of trying to understand what actually happened, they feel like this is a good way to play the game. I think that is just the core issue of Europe, is that people prefer being inconsistent because it means that they can sometimes beat someone. Whereas like, if you, like, we take this high level player, and let's say he's like steadily improving his skill, right? It would look more like this. In those 20 tournaments, he might not beat the top level player once. But as you can see, like, it's gonna start happening soon. But people prefer this over this. That's what it comes down to. Now, here we get one step further, right? Being results-based is definitely a problem, yeah. So here we get one step further. So the understanding is kind of subpar, which leads to subpar playstyles. Now, the inconsistency, the issue with that is that the inconsistency is generally not even reliant on things like conditioning or mix-ups, right? Conditioning or mix-ups. The issue is this swinginess is mostly about the way they play risk-reward. So again, it's a matter of understanding. So the times that they beat the better player is not even about them having the right read or conditioning them well. It's about just, you know, finding what they want. This is the thing about, again, the thing about Europe, very focused on their own character. Now here's the thing. Why is Europe so focused on their own character and America less so? It's because people don't know matchups. So the point is, because people generally don't get to grind matchups, you get away with being relatively subpar at your character. Okay, that's basically what it comes down to. And you get away with just looking for what you want because people don't know what you want. That's what it comes down to. So because inexperience is such a strong thing in Europe, you don't need a game plan because people don't know how to beat your character. You don't need adaptation because people don't know what to do about your character. You don't need conditioning because people don't know what you're conditioning for. You don't need awareness because people don't know what the fuck you're doing. You don't need mix-ups because they don't even know what the mix-up is. You don't need understanding because they don't understand shit about your character. Right? Like, all this knowledge goes out of the window if you just play an obscure character. Now, let me ask you. If you're not from France, do you have experience against a good Roy? No. Do you have experience against a good Falcon? No. Do you have experience against a good Wario? No. If you're not from the Netherlands, do you have experience against a good Peach? Well, Ramon to some degree, but generally no. Do you have experience against a good Bowser Jr.? No. Right? So a lot of characters in Europe get to skip this because of the smaller player base. How does this apply to a very popular character? So that's kind of the thing. At the top of Europe, you don't see a lot of popular characters, right? The most common one is Greninja. And even like Greninja, like, of course you have like, you don't really have, I mean, Robin GG is good, but he's not on level with Mario. Let me put it that way. So like, you have Istudy in the Netherlands. You have Tarek in Germany. Tarek almost never grinds with Germans, as far as I know. Istudying does play a little bit with other Dutchies, so like, you know. Alex Zhao basically quit for Guilty Gear. So like, even Greninja, who's like the most common top level European character, like almost no one has experience against Greninja. Now we get to the next point. Wi-Fi. No one in Europe likes Wi-Fi. So the top level players, they don't understand most matchup, or well, they don't understand most matchups because most people don't play Wi-Fi, right? Big character roster kind of ruins smaller player. Exactly. So let me give you the anecdote, right? So S1 went to the US in Smash 4 when there was also like a perceived gap in skill, and he played against Captain Zack. It was a Bayo player. Now, turns out Bayo was really popular in the Netherlands and in Europe in general. So S1 actually went last hit with him. And like, I'll tell you right now, Zach, like S1 could reach Zach's level, and it looks like the main difference there is like matchup experience, right? So like, if S1 had experience in all the matchups to the degree that he had against Bayo, he would be able to go even with people. But we'll get to that in a second, right? So the point is, people get away with a lack of knowledge in Europe, a lot, and people don't get punished for not having knowledge. So a lot of people get away with having shitty game plans. That's just what it comes down to. Like, Europe plays by instinct, and a lot of Americans do too. But if you look at like the top level instinctual players, right? You look at like Cola, Mars, Light. They always base their instinct on like very clear ideas. They always base their instinct on there's always like a game plan to back it up. Like, I don't know if you guys ever seen, but Mars actually started reviewing some of his own games on his YouTube channel. They're actually pretty good reviews. I like personally. Oh, that's me. Don't do that. So where's Mars YouTube channel? Right. He actually did reviews of his own games a while back. I think if I look at where's MK Leo. Right. So how ESM demolished MK Leo. How there's one about like how I beat MK Leo. Right. How MK Leo lost Genesis 6? No. How I won Genesis 6. This is the one where he talks about how he beat MK Leo. This is very insightful. And what this shows is like, when you look at Mars, it's like, oh, he's just making hard reads. Like, he has some very clear ideas of how to get the hard reads. Whereas in Europe, I feel like a lot of people, they don't get reads. They go for what they want to do, and then it works or it doesn't. Right? He has a very read-based way of looking at the game, but that's fair, right? Like, as long as you have a theoretical understanding of how to play the game, you can build upon it. If you don't have that theoretical framework at all, or it's like scattered concepts, it's very hard to base a theoretical game plan on it, right? So kind of like the knowledge. Oh, that's not YouTube, right? So the knowledge is a big thing in Europe that is lacking, in my opinion.